So Mary Crow made a post over at Star Trek talking about Picard's line in kind of Insurrection where he says, does anyone remember when we used to be explorers? So this amusement kind of stems from the next generation in which, they really didn't do all that much kind of pure exploration, as it were. A lot of people do question this. So, Mary Crow does explain he goes over some qualitative investigation and, of course, tries to determine exactly what the Enterprise got up to during its 7-year voyage in the next generation. I mean, why bother with all of these missions? I mean, there's a huge sum to it, and we're going to go into scope now. Okay, so in scope, the goal was to try and find out what kind of missions were assigned to the Enterprise kind of during the run of TNG, and that's what Mary Crow was doing. TNG episodes, often begin with kind of one main mission, and this is before being thrust into a new and unexpected kind of new situation. These cases are kind of looked at the original mission, and, this is kind of presumed by Starfleet. And it's under reasonable assumption that the Enterprise D can expect these sorts of things and can cope with these sorts of things too, and also be able to react in new and unexpected events. So I mean, this is of course limited to the television show, but we're going to go into some Star Trek Fleet Command data in a minute. But the fact is that the Enterprise had so many adventures in other forms of comics, dramas, miniseries, blah, blah, blah. And we're assuming that the television series itself covers most of the ship's relevant sort of canon missions in a way. Okay, so the method. So a lot of this, people are gathering, Mary Crow, for example, is gathering from Memory Alpha. So kind of noting down the missions assigned to the Enterprise for each episode. So they're kind of aligned in a way which is quite beneficial to us in that it can be detailed in kind of many different forms. So I mean, these are usually outlined in sort of Captain Picard's kind of introductory log in the episode before going into kind of more detail later on. So the point is, Mary Crow on Star Trek grouped everything into kind of 10 categories. So kind of here they are. So number 1, exploring strange new worlds. So these are missions which are kind of deep space exploration, surveying planets, charting new nebulas, and kind of examining unusual phenomena in space. Okay, number 2, seeking out new life and new civilizations. So these are missions specifically to investigate or establish some sort of contact with these unfamiliar life forms. Number 3, military security operations. So these are missions to kind of protect the Federation from threats, or to kind of investigate any potential criminal activity which might occur in space. Number 4, delivering supplies or providing aid. So picking up or delivering supplies usually to a colony world, but also, providing medical assistance when there's a pandemic or other forms of technical assistance to worlds through man-made disasters or natural disasters. Number 5, shore leave. The crew takes a mandated break, such as Teresa or any other planets like that. Number 6, mission rescue / distress call. So the ship, the Enterprise, often responds to an emergency call for help at relatively short notice. I've kind of noticed too. Kind of number 7, upgrades and maintenance missions. So the Enterprise has an appointment to enhance its systems, repair damage, or carry out routine maintenance, and unexpected things do happen when this happens. Number 8, diplomatic missions. So the Enterprise plays a key role in kind of mediating disputes or kind of extending diplomatic outreach on behalf of the Federation. Usually under Captain Picard or Riker or or people like that. Number 9, the taxi service. Now the Enterprise is kind of tasked with carrying VIPs, usually diplomatic people, and it takes them to where they need to go. So the Enterprise D usually helps with this. And number 10, last but not least, the kind of unknown missions which are not really categorized. So there's a bunch of missions which fit into this category. I don't need to go into detail here, but you guys know that there's some missions which don't fit into these 10 categories. Okay, so let's discuss the findings idea. So here is a chart which kind of details this, which I'm going to kind of explain here, and I'll bring up the chart again. But pure exploration actually takes up more of the Enterprise's time than really any of us can think of. Exploring strange new worlds in Star Trek is probably the single largest category of mission, although the vast majority of these examples kind of refer to kind of space missions rather than going down to the planet itself. Still, this combines, kind of seeking out new life, new civilizations, and it accounts for kind of a quarter of the missions in the chart. So if I bring up the new chart here, kind of in STFC, this is what we're looking at here. So until the developers can kind of introduce new factions and new worlds to us, pure exploration rarely takes place, in my opinion. Okay, so seeking out new life, new civilizations in the mission profile provided to us by Merrycrow. Conversely, it's a very rare primary objective. We hear about many of these, kind of first contact situations that Picard goes over, and it seems that almost all of them were kind of random encounters rather than kind of Starfleet initiating this. And we suppose that all these contacts are generally, kind of a side effect to kind of the general space exploration and all those survey missions that the Enterprise D does. So going back to Star Trek Fleet Command, first contact missions here rarely happen. I've heard about one or two, but it's very rare, and it's kind of up to the developers, I think, to kind of introduce to us new life for us to discover. So that's why here we see 1%. Okay, so kind of military security operations. So a lot of them, going back to Star Trek Prime, delivering supplies and providing aid, rescue missions, distress calls, whatever you want to call it, is what we'd consider kind of similar duties to those carried out in the modern day today. With the Army, we're seeing this with the COVID-19 crisis. We see the Army going into kind of vulnerable areas and providing aid. This is especially happening today. And in Star Trek, they account for about 40% of the missions in Merrycrow's mission profile. In Star Trek Fleet Command, going back to this in Star Trek Fleet Command, this is a very regular thing. You're either asked to kind of donate resources to help a planet or deliver supplies. So I'd say this 40% is very representative in Star Trek Fleet Command. We're doing a lot of these for sure. So again, okay, so the diplomatic remit is kind of less than we expected. Diplomatic missions and taxi services kind of account for 20% of the missions in Merrycrow's mission profile. In Star Trek Fleet Command, take a look here. We see this all the time, right? We have to traffic specific individuals to independent systems all the time. So I'd say this is more 20% or more for this in Star Trek Fleet Command. Okay, so let's go into some of the limitations. Mary Crow kind of explains that this is, of course, a qualitative study, and it's based on, all the information we could have gathered. It's not a lot of information, but it is some information. And again, different people, of course, have different data. So some of the things that I would argue is that we need to see more pure exploration missions for Star Trek Fleet Command. So taking a look back at this chart here, only 5% is kind of dedicated to pure exploration in Star Trek Fleet Command. I would love to see more pure exploration missions take place. And for sure, I'd love to see kind of more missions where we explore new life and new civilizations. I would love for this to happen. Developers make it happen. Also, military and security operations, we're doing a lot of those right now, so we don't need to see a lot more of those. And the diplomatic remit, where favoring people, we don't need to see a lot more of those either, I think. So that is it for now. I think, all in all, space is often quiet and empty. There's not a lot of missions going on, or is there? Developers, we need to see more missions, more unique missions in Star Trek Fleet Command. Guys, have your say. Leave a comment below if you think there should be more unique missions in Star Trek Fleet Command. All right, guys, thank you and stay safe.